It's time for NFL Betting Blitz Week 18. We've made it to Week 18. Only a few times in history we've been to an NFL Week 18. Erik, I got to say, in the years that you and I have been talking football together, the last 5 years or so, this is probably one of the weeks at the end of the year where it feels like there's the least amount of stuff that teams are playing for. There's really only a few games where teams are playing for playoff spots. A lot of these teams know that they're not making the playoffs this year. They're kind of they're looking for next year. They're having guys kind of play for jobs. They're maybe auditioning. We have players maybe trying to hit their incentives, right? Certain players are trying to hit milestones, maybe get some of those contract bumps. Guys like Mike Evans trying to keep his 1,000-yard streak alive. So there's things that teams and particular players are playing for. But on the overall, we saw the Bengals yesterday and the Ravens have games that had a little bit of meaning in them. And there are some today, but it feels like there's just a lot of teams that already know they don't really have a shot.
It's going to be a weird week. Obviously, there's some historical trends I'm going to point out to when we get to the betting part of the show about teams that have been eliminated, playing teams about that need to quote unquote win to get in, teams with a winning record against teams with a losing record. I like the contract incentive things. I've been doing that for a couple years, but yeah. I also kind of feel it's a little bit too mainstream right now.
They're getting built into the lines more than they used to, right?
Yeah, you have to dig a little deeper. I found a couple deeper ones that I'm going to take some shots on.
Okay, so we'll get into the full slate of games for today. Just as a little bit of a recap for what happened on Saturday. So Ravens winning, Steelers losing. Ravens lock up the division for sure. And the Bengals winning means that they're still alive. So now the Bengals put a little bit of pressure on the Broncos first and then the Dolphins, because Broncos win, they're in. If the Broncos lose, the Dolphins have the opportunity to win and they're in. And if both of those teams lose, we know the Bengals, they've already won, so they're in. So that was at least one of the important pieces to this week, the Bengals winning and putting a little pressure and having those other couple games still be meaningful. And, you know, this first game that we talk about is very meaningful because you're going to have the Tampa Bay Bucks playing for the division. This is one of the games that's really important this week. Tampa controls their own destiny. They are a 14.5-point favorite now against the New Orleans Saints, against the division rival. So Baker, Bucky, I mean, you look at what Bucky Irvin's been doing recently. He has been incredible. Since week 7, he's averaged 87.7 rushing yards per game and 31 receiving yards per game. And in that stretch, there was a week 13 where he only had 4 yards rushing and 15 yards receiving total. So if you took that game out, his numbers would be even bigger. He's been one of the real reasons why their offense has been so good, because they've got a new dynamic. They weren't able to run the ball really for about a year and a half. It was all peppering Evans and Godwin and Otten and using the receivers. Well, now they've got, you know, a running game. They have another rookie receiver that's been in the mix. And they're also leaning on Evans again, who was hurt for a while. But Evans, 915 receiving yards. He's trying to get to 1,000, Erik, to tie Jerry Rice for 11 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons.
Yeah, which is just absolutely insane when you look at what he's done for his career. The incentive that I'm going to do here is MVS gets $250K bonus if he just scores a TD. His touchdown price is plus 310 on Caesar. So that was the first bet I did in this game. Marcus Valdez-Scantling, the law for him to score a TD at plus 310. My next bet is I took the Saints here plus 14.5. Since 1990, teams that are eliminated playing teams that need to win to make the playoffs, the final 2 weeks of the season are 60% against the number. Mayfield divisional games is only 42% against the number as a favorite. That dips all the way down to 39.6%. Bucks defense can be passed on, especially hard to trust with them laying anything over 2 touchdowns. Teams after winning by 31 or more points, 45% when they're favorites, 43. To me, this just has backdoor written all over it. I'm going to take the Saints here. I got them at 14.5.
How about Erik, I was looking at some of my pools, and I had a great start the first 13, 14 weeks of the year. And then the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've struggled a little bit. And I was looking at the numbers. So the way that you and I play, favorites of 6 or more points since week 13 are 30-1 straight up. 30-1 straight up. So we're not having a lot of big dogs win in particular or cover. And that's the kind of thing you and I are looking for a lot of the time. I Hate the Lakers is looking for that here too. He says Saints straight up. So he's taking a big swing at the Saints straight up, Erik. When the Chalks are winning that much, you and I probably aren't winning as much. Now, that was a straight up stat, not against the spread. You're getting some of them covering, but a lot of them haven't been. And we're getting these bad favorites, like the big road favorites that really covering. Maybe we can get a bounce back this week where we get some of those dogs winning a few of these games straight up. And that's what I Hate the Lakers like. That's a big money line, huh? If you like them straight up.
5.
Yeah. So sprinkle a little bit on that. Let's make some money. Said this is my favorite week of the year. Lots of teams overvalued, but contract incentives too mainstream if you're not, if they're built into it, right? If you can see in the line that these lines are bumped up a little bit. So that's game 1 today. Saints, Bucks. I mean, now up to 15. You think the Bucks get the job done? I mean, they're winning, you're in, and they feel like they probably are a team like they've played the Lions pretty tough the last couple of years, right? From the playoffs last year to earlier this year. They're the type of team that I don't think could win 3 or 4 games in a row, but they could probably punch up and upset one of these teams if Baker's playing well and their offense is playing well.
Yeah, I mean, they're very capable with Baker. Bulls is a Super Bowl winning coach. They have all the pieces to pull an upset off, but to piece 3-4 games together, that's really unrealistic.
Yeah, completely agree. They're probably the more fun option, though, than Atlanta with what we've seen from Atlanta down the stretch. What are we going to do with the Bills here, Erik, who are heading to the Patriots? The Bills are a 3.5-point favorite on the road. They've locked up the number 2 spot, so they really don't have anything to play for. They did say Josh Allen is going to start because I think he has a streak alive, right?
He's going to play maybe 2.
One series. Yeah.
But I mean, here it's really tough. How long is Allen going to play? Is May going to play?
Right.
Patriots right now have the top draft pick. Obviously, this is an insane draft for offensive linemen. You have Travis Hunter, who I think is going to be electric in the league. Quarterback, not that much. Patriots have their guy in May. Do they want to lose this pick? You know what I mean? Like, how incentivized are they?
We saw the Giants kind of screw themselves last week a little bit, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, it's really hard to do anything. I don't think Mayo's that good of a coach. I would think that they're going to stay with him, which I think is a mistake.
Because I would go Vrabel if I were them right away. Vrabel being a Patriots guy, a guy that like has some of that culture.
Like, he's going to have his pick. Like, why would you go there?
I wouldn't at all. And so if you're Vrabel right now, what would be kind of the sexy option for you?
Jesus.
Chicago's probably there. Let's say the Patriots are an option, but the Raiders might be an option. Who knows? I don't know if that's one. I mean, just kind of throwing that out there.
I mean,
Jags might be one.
I heard that Jags and Ben Johnson are pretty much a done deal. Just because they're going to let him have the GM stuff. So as a first-year coach, being able to walk in
and have the personnel decisions
who we're drafting,
that's awesome.
Really happen a lot. So if you get that, I think that's a good done deal. Flores has ties to Poles, so I could see Flores go to Chicago. I don't know, Dallas maybe. McCarthy his contract's up.
And he looked like the way Dallas had been playing down the stretch before last week. It looked like McCarthy was going to maybe get a chance to come back because the players almost seemed like they were playing for him. Man, they laid down last week and got destroyed. So if they get beat up again and the last couple of weeks you have a really bad taste in your mouth, if a guy like Vrabel wants to come in there,
But I mean, it's not like Jones would fire him. His contract's up.
Yeah.
Like, the last day of his contract. So
absolutely.
I mean, he could just decide, hey, I'm out. I want to go someplace else. Maybe he ends up in Chicago as an offensive mind. I I don't know. It's going to be interesting, everything that goes down there. There's obviously going to be a surprise coach that keeps his job, a surprise coach that loses his job. What's going to happen in Indianapolis? Is Shane Steichen going to be let go? I don't know.
So the Bills don't have much to play for today. Patriots don't really want to win. This is a tough game to get a feel for. Von Miller needs 1 sack today to get a $1.5 million incentive, 3 sacks to get another $2 million.
What is the sack prop?
So this is from Shefty. So maybe we can get something there on Miller.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, you got someone like Shefty tweeting
it out. It's going to be all like
how
so when he tweets it out 2 hours ago, then it's built, you know what I mean? The last 2 hours before we even talk about it, I'm sure the lines and people have gone and bet it, and you don't really have any value on there. And the problem with something like that is, like, sure, they'll let him play a series or two, but Von Miller, he's a guy who you really want and need for the playoffs, right? Like, you want him out there in these meaningless reps.
Yeah.
You know, like, no, I wouldn't. So that's Bills, Patriots. We got the Bears at the Packers. Packers are a 10-point favorite in this game. You feel that they kind of just want to get a good half and have their offense kind of humming, because they struggled so badly to start the game last week. They came back late. They were down 17 with 17 minutes left. Came all the way back. Felt like they were going to come back and win the game, but they just couldn't get the stop they needed to get the ball back late. They had 5 games in a row with at least 30 points, but they only had a field goal through the first 2.5 quarters last week when they played the Vikings. Kind of a bad matchup for them both times this year against the Vikings. Vikings have sort of had their way with them early, and then Green Bay has come back late. 3 points in the first half was tied for their lowest scoring output this season. They were outgained by 112 yards. It was the worst first half yardage differential this year. And the key for them, they're combined 0-5 against the NFC teams with the 3 best records. Lions, Vikings, Eagles. That's where all their losses have come from. So I could see them wanting to look good for a quarter or a half here. Green Bay trying to just have their offense, have a nice couple of drives, make sure they're flowing really well, and then sit the guys the second half. Man, for the Bears, like, they haven't gotten any of the fired bumps. They've made some personnel changes with their coaching staff, fired Eberflus. They changed with Waldron calling the plays, and it just really hasn't mattered. Last week, they had 7 drives end in punts. They just feel like one of the teams that's just trying to get to the offseason right now.
And excuse me. And the thing with this is one of those scoreboard watching games. If Washington loses to the Cowboys and the Packers win, the Packers will move up to the 6th line, and they'll play the Rams.
Dude, you'd way rather play the Rams than the Eagles?
Yeah. Now, if Washington loses, then they're going to play the Eagles. So to me, I think they're going to play them until it looks like the game in Washington.
It doesn't matter, right? Yeah.
Concluded. So, I mean, I think they're going to compete until there's just going to be some major.
They have incentive to play, right? They're more than just looking good offensively. They can actually, I think there's the Chargers too, or another one. They can move up a spot or down a spot based on what happens with Washington. So they're going to be playing hard until Washington's up 30 or something like that, right?
Yeah. They're going to, they're going to compete, like, maybe to like the 4th quarter until they see. And who knows with Washington, we'll get to that game in a little bit, but to me, that's a perfect letdown spot for Washington after winning the game the way they did last game.
Big emotional victory. Absolutely. And now still with a young team, a young quarterback, and a head coach who's not all that experienced as a head coach. This is kind of new for them. How are you going to get up for this emotionally? A couple things here. OK State basketball is awful.
Like, they could. Second half was a lot better. You know, they just had one of those things. They could not hit the broad side of the barn, but you have to fade West Virginia after going to Lawrence and beating Kansas. That's just a schedule bet.
We also had check in with young native Tino, who said the Bengals would have to think about that. They'd have to go Ravens, Bills, and then Chiefs. That would be a total murderer's row for them. They could score with those teams, but they sure
And I mean,
can't.
that's the thing. Like, no team, we'll get to it a little bit why this Minnesota-Detroit game is a little good. No team has gone on the road 3 straight games in the wild card era and won a Super Bowl.
Good stat. Good note there. So Packers, Bears, Packers trying to win to see if they can move up, play the Rams instead of having to play the Eagles. Next, we go Jacksonville at the Colts. Man, the Colts, you wonder how they're going to play when they really squandered their chance last week against the Giants. They had the opportunity to stay alive for a playoff spot, and they were bad. And really their defense, they could not get stops when they needed. It was kind of embarrassing. So now they are eliminated. And you start to ask the question for them. It's only 2 seasons, but Richardson now can't really stay healthy. It's hard to get a read on him when he can't play more than 4 or 5 games in a row, because every time it feels like there's some sort of growth or improvement, then he has to take a couple steps back and sort of start all over again. So they knew he was a project, Eric. I just feel like they were probably hoping he would have been a little healthier so they could have gotten a better understanding, make a better read for him. Overall, this guy in his starting year at Florida in college, and then his 2 seasons now with the Colts, he hasn't had a whole ton of starts and a whole ton of reps. So for a young guy who is a total project and you need a lot of reps, he hasn't had them. So you kind of almost feel like you've had 2 years and you really don't even know what you've got yet right now.
You have no idea what you have. He was raw coming in. He needs a lot of work. Obviously, it's a tough situation. We got the McAfee actually talking shit.
I know, that's so funny. Yeah,
I think McAfee's worthless. I'm not a big fan of his. But anyway,
no, the last couple years, I got to say, like, shout out to him. He obviously works hard, makes a ton of money. Like, he gets a lot of people to watch and listen to his shows, and but like he's become very like caricature. Like he does and says a lot of the stuff to get the buzz versus like you wonder how real a lot of the things are. The stuff with Aaron Rodgers was kind of cringy. Yeah, and even this, like he's kind of attacking the Colts overall and the way their organization has been run. Like, what do? Do they kind of feel the need to like fire back through their play today? Do they kind of try to stomp on the Jags, even though it doesn't really matter?
I mean, it's an interesting game. And I mean, on the flip side, so let's look at the Colts. We were talking about the Colts. Let's look at them. Maybe Flacco's last game. Is he going to be lighting up this Jags defense, which can be throwing on? How much effort's going to be there from the Colts? They really looked like they gave the Giants no respect last week, and it showed with the Giants winning the game they had no business winning. Colts look very unprepared. Flip side, worst kept secret in the NFL right now is Peterson's gone. It seems to me the last couple of weeks they have been playing for Dougie. They seem to like him down there. Is this going to be an effort from the Jags? Brian Thomas Jr., I know a lot of people are talking about the rookie record for receptions between Neighbors and Bowers. Brian Thomas Jr. could get the yards record. So I think he's in a position to have a good game. I'd look to play some of his props. Michael Pittman, this over 51.5 receiving yards. Last week with Flacco went well over it. Flacco tends to throw a little bit more, target the inside part of the field. That could be good, but line movement, this was 4.5. It's moved down to 3.5. I want nothing to do with it. I have Pittman, I have Thomas, and some DFS lineups.
Yeah, I've no clue what to do from a particular game side, but Thomas is the guy that I'm leaning on because Thomas has 10 games this year with at least 75 receiving yards. That's the most by a rookie in the Super Bowl era. And, quietly, this group of receivers has been really good, this rookie group. They've had Neighbors, Bowers, Ladd McConkey, and Brian Thomas Jr. all going over 1,000 yards. That's the first time in history 4 rookies have all reached 1,000 receiving yards. So,
I mean, looking at it right now, he's got 1,179, Bowers 1,144, Neighbors 1,140. They are 6, 7, and 8. They could be a thing where they really give him an opportunity to move up so that way he can have that record.
Yeah. Yeah, so I also have Brian Thomas Jr. in Boom Fantasy lineup this weekend. So that's a look at the Jags and the Colts. We move to the Panthers at the Falcons. Big game. Atlanta needs to win, and they need the Bucs to lose for Atlanta to win the division. Man, this team has had so many chances this year. They started 6-3 and they squandered it. Even last week, some weird decision making, a couple Penix mistakes here and there, but like rookie mistakes. He's a better option than Cousins because he can do more. Like they can open up the playbook a lot more because Cousins hasn't been able to move. But in a situation like this, and in these games moving forward, it'll probably start to weigh on the rook and inexperience a little bit more. He's going to be put in some tough situations, even in a spot like this against the Carolina team that you pointed this out, Eric, last week, because I went in on Carolina in a spot as a dog, but you were really hitting on how the injuries they had on the defensive side and not having Hubbard last week was really going to hurt them, and they just couldn't move the ball, you could see. And then defensively, they couldn't get any stops whatsoever. It's a big number here, though, for a divisional game, and for the most part, the Carolina Panthers have played pretty well through the second half of the season. Do you get involved in this game anyway, or any props in here that you're jumping in on?
I did the Panthers. I got them at same angles before, teams that have been eliminated, playing a team that needs to win, 60% ATS. I know people have been saying Penix looked good. I've rewatched both games. He locks in. He only goes to one wide receiver, doesn't scan the whole field. And I talked about it before. He's left-handed. The whole thing, offensive line responsibilities flipped. Routes have been flipped. The offense just doesn't look right for the Falcons. I know the Panthers struggle stopping the run, but these 2 years with the Falcons, I have never seen a team be more unwilling to feed a running back than I have with the Falcons and Bijan Robinson. So are they really going to do that? Now, the Falcons is another game, scoreboard watching. If the Bucs are up, will the Falcons kind of pull off the trigger? Because the Falcons need to win, and they need the Bucs to lose to get in. Falcons back four struggles, especially in the slot. That's where Young targets the most against Adam Thielen. Morris struggles as a favorite. You have a rookie quarterback making his third start. That means there's more film on them, laying over a touchdown. I think the number's inflated because of the Panthers game last week. Teams that lost by 31 points or more, 56% against the spread when they're dogs, 60% when they're road dogs, 62. This is a team. This coach is coming back. So all these players are playing for the coach, trying to get momentum into last year. This isn't a lamed up coach experience. Try to win one.
Bryce Young is trying still, right? He wants to look good. Well, he needs to get more reps. He wants to get like a good feeling going into the offseason.
Yeah. So I want, I'm on the Panthers here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is one of the few sides I'm on this week. I just think this is one of the real sides to hit on. So, Eric, before we move on to a few more games, I want to let some of the folks know out there about today, Gulfstream Park mandatory payout in the Rainbow Pick 6. So the pool is already over 300,000. They're projecting it to be over 3 million today. And you can play that one for 20 cents. It's going to start in race 5. I'm going to put out a ticket in a little bit if you want to follow on social media, and I'll post it on YouTube. I'm going to post the ticket on Blue Sky, and I'll also post it on Instagram as well. So if you want to play, remember with 20 cent base wagers, you can play a pretty nice ticket for $30 or $40 if you want to. That's today at Gulfstream Park in race number 5. And Eric, I had a nice day yesterday. I hit the late pick 5 at Gulfstream. It paid just about $1,000. And then I hit the coast to coast pick 5, which is a wager that combines races from Santa Anita and Gulfstream every Saturday and Sunday. It's a $1 pick 5, 15% takeout. And I ended up hitting that thing yesterday. I paid $2,600.
Oh,
so
wow.
Had a pretty nice day. So I'm feeling good about it right now. If you want some help.
Last night?
What?
Did you go to Sizzler last night?
Oh, we went to Sizzler last night. We ordered some nice food. I ordered some delivery ice cream from Cold Stone. I got one of the big, when I get them delivered, I get the big ones so we can have it there. My chocolate chips and rainbow sprinkles with my cake batter ice cream all mixed up too. So yeah, It was good seeing the ball well. Good fun day on the Sunday if you want to play along. And then also another thing to mention, those contests that you won, Eric, those pick'em contests. Today there's a bunch of NFL props. Type in the website, folks, pick'em.santanita.com, and then just fill out an entry. It's totally free. And every Saturday and Sunday over the next 3 or 4 months, they will have these contests where you just answer the prop questions. And if you win, you get $500. So a couple ways that maybe a little later on throughout the day, you can make some money with racing at Gulfstream, Santa Anita, and then those pick'em prop contests. Eric, we're both going to be on Carolina plus the points. What do we do with Washington, 7-point favorite on the road against Dallas, a Dallas team that matched up well with them earlier in the year, and the same kind of situation that we just had in that Atlanta game, right, where we have a divisional opponent coming off of a game where they just got their butts kicked. We have one team with something to play for, the other team not really playing for much, but we said about Dallas with McCarthy, maybe these guys are playing for spots. Maybe some of these guys are playing for McCarthy to try to let Jones know, bring him back or not. Do you have a play in this game with Dallas and Washington?
I kind of feel like it's a flat spot for the Commanders after winning the game like they did last week. But the main thing is we don't know who's playing quarterback. Cooper Rush has its incentive where he plays over 55% of the snaps. He gets a huge bump in his contract. And the Cowboys haven't announced if he's playing or not. Now, I look at it like that. If I'm someone like Micah Parsons who says he's going to play, if they're not rolling out Cooper Rush,
why am I playing?
Play? I know. So I need to really see that chip fall before I decide to do anything. So I kind of sat this one out, and I'm kind of letting the chips kind of fall where they will.
Yeah, I mean, I would be on the Dallas side. It must show you that Trey Lance has got to be awful, right? In practice, even if they're not even trying to give this guy a look out there to see if there's anything they can get from him. Because we haven't seen him get any opportunities really at all.
It's just one of those things where, like, scouting's tough. You know, I have some friends and everything, and I spend a lot of work in my little NFL draft stuff I do. I wasn't high on Trey Lance, and I never got the appeal of him, and we just kind of fall in love with these guys that do some things.
It can run a little bit sometimes, that have a little
strong arm. This is when Josh Allen was going through his stuff.
You're right.
Now, are we going now since Jaden Daniels is having the success that he's having? Are we going to look to now? Is there going to be a couple of mobile, undersized quarterbacks that are overdrafted in their draft stock? Because this reality is this.
It's a copycat league, right? You sort of follow.
And I'll be honest, Cam Ward and Shadir Sanders, I'm not that high on. I don't think
I agree.
Top 10 picks, and I feel that we're going to get both guys going in the top 10
because the teams that need quarterbacks, they're the only options you have. It's them and the free agency, and so it's not like last year we kind of laughed, but the 5 or 6 guys that were drafted last year feel like they're probably better options than maybe the 2 coming out this year.
Everything goes in waves. Like, for someone like me, I love this draft just because the offensive line talent is so deep. I mean, my eyes, there should be, 5 players in the top 10 that are drafted for offensive line. That's how deep it is. And you can build from the inside out, which you really should do.
That's what the good teams do, but the teams that like with new GMs or young or new owners that want to make a splash, they don't want to go draft an offensive lineman because that's boring. They want to go get their quarterback, or they want to go up and get a wide receiver that they think is going to be really flashy, when that's not the right way to build your roster. You need to start in the trenches always. I mean, Eric, you see it in the college football playoff at the highest level. And that's the difference between like a March Madness in the NBA or in college basketball versus in football. Like, you're not going to have 16 seeded teams beating teams that were like 1 seeded in football because they don't have the guys in the trenches. They don't have the linemen. Like a good team like a Notre Dame, Ohio State, with the linemen they have, Georgia, they're going to wear down any underdog upstart team that just doesn't have that depth. In basketball, it's different. You could have one good player transfer in, and that guy on the court with 5 guys is the best player, and he can win you a game. That rarely happens in football. And, you see it in the trenches. Big news, Mooney today is out for the Falcons. Ooh. Okay.
Moves it for me. That moves it for me.
So keep that in mind as we move along. Eric, where do we head next? Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. So the Texans have an opportunity. They're locked in. They're locked in here. They can't move up and down. What's been frustrating for them, they're kind of like what the Packers have been dealing with. And it is sort of funny because coming into the year, the Texans and the Packers were sort of the two darling teams, right? With the young quarterbacks. They had good years last year, and everybody was kind of projecting them as being the teams to take the next step to be the Super Bowl contenders. They haven't proven it because both of the teams can't beat good teams. The Texans are 1-5 this year against teams with winning records, and they just allowed the Ravens to run for 251 yards. Who's playing quarterback for the Titans?
Mr. Mayo himself, Will Levis. And this is an interesting thing real quick with the Titans. What are they going to do? Right now, they're in hypothetically the second draft pick. If I'm them, I just draft another tackle just because I'm not going to stretch on a quarterback. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks. Do they trade for JJ McCarthy? Do they throw a fourth round pick, have him come in, try it with him? You know what I mean? Do they do that? Do they bring in Aaron Rodgers? Do they bring in Kirk Cousins? There's going to be options, but I feel those 3 options are better than Cam Ward or Sanders right now. So it's going to be interesting what they do in terms of this game. Look, I got the Titans at +1.5. Obviously, what is it now? -1, -1.5 for them.
Yeah.
I would still play it here. Texans, nothing to play for, banged up. I think they're going to rest some starters. They're going to treat it like a preseason game. Plus, we need to remember the Titans, they're due for positive regression. They're the worst team ever against the spread. They're 2-14 right now. Now, I mentioned the quarterback position. No team has ever done this before. The Titans defense has allowed the second fewest yards this year. They've allowed the 3rd most points. Why is that? Turnover. They're due for some positive turnover regression. Pollard is going to go. Look, he needs 84, 85 yards to reach his incentive. His rushing prop has always been in the 60s this year. It's 82.5. And he's been banged up all week. That's one of those ones, it doesn't make sense for me to play. Even his 2 TDs, looking at that, that's down to +350 for 2 TDs. That's just insane. So that's what I talk about when these incentives are tied in. Texas offensive line has been bad. I mentioned how good the Titans offensive line has been. I just think this is a thing where Titans are going to be fired up for this. They're going to look to finish the season on a high note. The whole coaching staff is coming back. Texans just want to get into the playoffs and avoid any major injuries. They've already lost Dell, already lost Diggs. They're going to treat this like the preseason game. I'll take the Titans here.
So, this was one that I didn't have a strong opinion on one way or the other for the game. What do we do with the Giants at the Eagles? Giants had the number 1 seed all locked up. They looked like the worst team in football, and they break a 10-game losing streak, and they score 45 points against the Colts team that's still trying to get into the playoffs. Kind of quietly, they've had their rookies, Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Neighbors, both reach 1,000 yards from scrimmage. They are the second rookie duo in the Super Bowl era to have 2 reach 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Hasn't really helped them a whole lot. For the Eagles, they're locked into the number 2. So they can't get higher or lower. Hurts, they got to get him healthy. Barkley will not play. He had a chance to break the all-time rushing record, but he passed 2,000 yards. What do you do in this game? Any thoughts? I threw Gainwell in because I feel like he's going to get just some run because Barkley's not going to be in there. Maybe he can get into the end zone. I put him in a boom. Do you have any plays or props?
Again, don't really know what's going to happen with the Eagles. I know Hurts isn't playing. I know Barkley's not playing, but what's going on in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, who's going to be playing. For me, the thing is this: it's a neck and neck race between Neighbors and Bowers for the rookie reception. Right now, Bowers has 108. Neighbors has 104. Now, the thing is, Neighbors plays in the early window. Bowers plays in the late window. What I did is I just threw pizza money on Neighbors at plus 400 to have 10 receptions.
I like that.
So he gets the 10 receptions, forces Bowers to have to get 7 for the record. I mean, if you really want to do it, you can get him at 11 or more at plus 700. I only did the 10 or more at plus 400. Only thing that caught my eye on this one.
And just looking at the inactives right now, Eagles, most of their key players, Hurts, Slay, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Nakobe Dean, Barkley, Zach Bond, Lane Johnson, they're all out. Bills, Taron Johnson, Mooney is out. Just a couple. I'll mention any others that we see from Shefty as he passes them along.
Something to remember, when these games end, it's Sunday night when the last game has ended right before the Vikings-Lions kick off. Numbers are going to start to come out for next week. Now, Hurts still has some concussion stuff going on. We need to monitor that number because that number, and you're going to be able to tell who is it going to be inflated, is it going to be deflated with who they're playing against. So that's something, there may be a little value there because if concussions are serious, I'm not taking anything away with it. But if a guy misses 2 games in a row with a concussion, they tend to linger a little bit. That's just something to kind of monitor and try to get ahead of the 8 ball on.
Up next, we've got the Dolphins at the Jets. So the Dolphins need the Broncos to lose, and then they can win, and they're in for the playoffs. I'm not sure if you saw the play last week in the Jets game. It was just kind of a microcosm of like Aaron Rodgers and why I don't like the guy, and it just like who he is as a person. They were getting crushed, and there was a moment when he threw a horrible interception, and the guy from the Bills is running the ball back, and he runs out of bounds, and then he's blatantly out of bounds. He's like 2 feet out of bounds, and Rodgers shoves him. Right? So Rodgers threw the interception. He made the bad play. The guy from the Bills picked him off, ran back, was out of bounds. Rodgers pushes him out of bounds like 2 feet after. And then like 10 seconds later, they throw a penalty. They call a penalty, obviously, for a late hit. And about 10 seconds later, the camera goes over to Rodgers and you see him like smile. Like the Grinch. I had just been watching the Grinch over and over, and it's that moment when like the Grinch smiles and it goes all big and evil. And it's just like, you're getting your ass kicked. Your season's been awful. You just threw a pick. Like, what do you have to smile about? But like, he just thinks it's funny that he went and pushed some guy afterwards and got a penalty. And it's like, what a piece of like, that's just, to me, that was like something that pissed, like I thought was so funny to see him in a game when they're terrible. Now, all that being said, they have a chance to make it a little tough on Miami. For sure this is Huntley playing today.
100% Snoop Huntley is playing. I gave this one out. I have 2 bets on this. I gave them both out Tuesday on my show. I did the Jets here. I got the Jets at plus 1.5. And I know, Look, I know the line has moved a lot because of the news that Huntley's going to be playing teams after losing by 30 points or more the week before. 53% ATS, 2.8% ROI. Now, when I did this, they were dogs 56%, home dogs 57%. Last 20 years, teams that have a 25% winning percentage or less playing a team with a 50% winning percentage or more, 63%. Supposed to be 34 degrees. Tua struggles in this weather. This is obviously going to be better for Huntley, but when you look at the Dolphins back part of the season when they're playing outside in cold weather, they struggle. Waddle looks like he's going to be playing. Hill's sick. We don't even know if Hill's going to be playing. Jets were better coached. They would have won the first game. Some time management issues at the end of the game. Dolphins struggle defending wide receiver ones, 25th DVOA against them last game against the Dolphins. Adams, 11 targets, 9 receptions, 109 yards. This will possibly be the last game together for Rodgers and Adams. I think he's going to get targeted greatly.
I threw Adams in a touchdown prop. Yeah.
Last 5 games, Adams averaging 11.2 targets, 7 receptions, 97.6 yards per game. One of my favorite angles, like I've said all show, fading a team that needs to win. So, look, I did that. I bet that. Jets plus 1.5. I also did the Adams anytime touchdown. I got that at plus 150 earlier in the week. Rodgers needs one more for 500. Him and Adams have been adamant he wants to be number 500. Finns have given up the 9th most TDs to wide receivers this season. Finns 8th worst in coverage per PFF. As I mentioned before, Dolphins 25th covering wide receiver ones. Guess which quarterback leads the league in audibles? No doubt, Aaron Rodgers. They get down to the red zone, down close to the goal line. He's going to be audibling it, looking to get the ball to Adams. Adams leads the Jets in red zone targets. So, I did Devontae Adams anytime touchdown.
Yeah, we'll show you our boom fantasy lineups at the end, and I've got Adams in one of mine. So we'll see if Snoop Huntley, who went 22 of 26 last week, can get the job done for the Dolphins today, maybe sneak them into the playoffs. The Broncos just need to win to get in. This will be their 3rd chance to clinch. They'll be playing the Chiefs backups, and they are an 11.5-point favorite. So the Chiefs, with the number 1 seed all locked up, sitting their starters, don't have anything really to play for here. Man, this is kind of a scary game, though, for Denver, right? You got all the pressure in the world on them because they played so well, overachieved, looked like on paper they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. We weren't sure if Bo Nix was going to be a guy. Taylor had not been very good in previous years, and we kind of were wondering about what overall he was as a coach. Now, huge game for this team, for their franchise moving forward. What do you think about the Broncos as a huge favorite here against the Chiefs backups?
So here's the thing. I want to take the Chiefs here, but I feel this is going to be the public
dog. Yeah.
Now, in another way, I think if Wentz was starting, now look, I know some key guys aren't playing. What would the Chiefs record? They'd probably still win 10 games. So I don't know what's going to happen here in terms of side. I just did the thing. Sutton, 82 yards needed to hit his incentive. His over-under, it opened up at 65.5. I bet it at over 65.5. I wouldn't do, if it's moved up now to in the 70s, I wouldn't do it. If it's 69 or lower, I play as over. It leaves them in targets, reception, and yards. Chiefs, sitting players. I think in this must-win situation, the Broncos will lean on their best player. So I'll take Sutton over 65.5 yards.
I think I said Taylor and Peyton, obviously, who, Eric, you and I have kind of always have been on this about Peyton maybe being a little overrated as a coach. This year he's done a good job, but can he get this team to really focus and get a big victory here, put them into the playoffs? Gino, what are your thoughts on the Reddick and Barkley back and forth? It's kind of funny, Eric. I don't know, because you talk about how you don't really watch or listen to a lot of the commentary and stuff. And the guys on TNT, they're funny. They're entertaining. Barkley and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie together, they're a lot of fun. But Reddick is right in that Barkley and Shaq are not analyzing the games. They're not breaking down film. They're not looking at stuff. They're telling you very mainstream narratives on things, and they're funny and they have good delivery and they're guys that you laugh at, but Barkley's not watching every play in the games, and he will have he's a human, we all are, but he'll go in there with it's not an anti-LeBron thing, but he's been very the Lakers aren't that good every year, even when the Lakers are good. So I think it kind of frustrates Laker fans in watching it. But I think overall NBA fans, when Barkley kind of starts talking about their teams, they get a little frustrated because Barkley, they do a segment where Barkley and Shaq have to try to guess if this player is on a certain team. They don't even really know the full rosters of teams. So,
but yeah. I mean, most of those guys, most of those talking heads, and I'm sure Reddick will admit to it too, they're just fed information.
That's their role.
You know what I mean? And they're just trying to be that.
They're like an actor.
The NBA, I mean, NBA's got a huge problem. Part of the problem is today you have the Thunder playing the Celtics, and that game was initially during the middle of the day going up against the NFL.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's
why
they eventually did flex it out. So it is going to be the night game on NBA. But again, why aren't more people talking about this game? That's kind of the fundamental problem of the NBA, that just the promotion is just not there. Now, look, obviously it's during NFL. NFL is going to be the monster. But there's always going to be a way to kind of cut into what the piece of the pie that the NFL has. I'm sure somebody's out there smart enough to think about it. But the NBA, maybe shorten the season, maybe don't start till Christmas. I don't know if that's the thing. But if they do that, what's that going to do? It's going to change players are going to have a huge decrease in salary because they're not going to be playing as much.
And it's like they're not going to, right? Owners aren't going to do that and lose money, right? They don't want to do that.
Uptick the ticket prices to cover everything. So I think that's an unrealistic option. They don't want to go too much in the summer because then it's going to face the same problems baseball has, vacation or going to a sporting event.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a way, maybe not play on the weekends, maybe not go face to face with the NFL, but there's got to be a way. This NBA Cup really hasn't done anything.
No, it seemed like the first year it was a little bit exciting because we didn't know what it was. They need to add an incentive to it because so for us as fans, the thing they have to add is it gives your team a playoff spot. If you win, you get the 6th spot at least. So like, your team by winning that cup has at least got something later in the year. Like, we don't care if the players get a little bit extra money. Like, why do we care as a fan? If
there's got to be something, there's got to be some incentive,
something for the fans to care a little bit more about it. I agree with you. NBA feels like this, the way the games are too. There's a lot of blowouts because of the shooting now, because everybody's shooting so many threes. So you're going to have many more games where teams are down by 20, 25 points, and you kind of turn it off early on. Erik, you read your Butler article. Yeah, the Spurs seem like a good fit for him, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to write more for my website, and I just put together a thing, just gave my 2 cents real quickly on the whole situation, and I laid out 3 teams. One team was obviously the Spurs, with all their young assets. Do they want to bring him in to kind of make a push right now? Or kind of wait until the Giannis, him, and he kind of dies down and Joker kind of dies down and kind of then go at it when it's Wemby's turn to kind of run the league. Interesting situation. I would think you want to give Wemby as much playoff basketball experience as you can when he's this young. Another team I put down was the Nuggets. I know they don't want to lose Porter, and Porter would have to be the key piece in the draft.
The salary probably in the trade, yeah.
Well, I mean, you need something back, and obviously Porter would be the guy, but do they want to move on from Porter? Does giving Butler there, it increases their competitiveness, but their floor spacing will obviously suck now when you have Butler there.
Not as good of a shooting team, yeah.
But defensively, they'd be better. You get that defense that Caldwell Pope played. And then the last team was the Grizz. Having him there kind of fits them.
Yeah, I like that.
You'd have to give up Bane.
Well, they got a lot of things they could give up. The Grizz do, right?
But then it goes back to a thing. Butler wants to play 50 to 60 games a year, get $50 million a year, then turn it on for the playoffs. That's what he wants. And he wants to go to a situation where he can win. And we need to remember he's been a headache everywhere he's gone.
Yeah.
People forget that people always point out they picked Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler in Philadelphia, but no one says Butler was such a headache inside the locker room. They purposely sent him when he was injured that year to LA to rehab. They got him out of the building to rehab. So
he's kind of worn out and the thing is too, like but you look at, like, I like the way he's driven. He's a guy, like you said, when he shows up in the playoffs, he's good, but he seems like he's a handful to have in your locker room because everywhere he's been, he's worn out his welcome, right? Chicago, then Minnesota, then Philly. Like you said, they were willing to say, hey, you know what? Butler might be the better player, but maybe he's a little bit less of a headache. So we'll go with Tobias Harris, who's maybe the safer option and might play more games for you. Now the same thing with Miami where they're suspended him. He's not even playing. Like when you're in that many relationships and every time it ends that poorly, at some point it might be you. Right?
Yeah, it's hard to look in the mirror and say, hey, this is me. Now look, he never got him a title, got him to 2 championships. One of them is the bubble, which is always kind of looked on a little differently. I'm not taking anything away. That was a tough circumstance.
No, but you're right. It was a different way of doing it. And
he always wanted help. They never got him help. But part of the things with the Heat is the Heat are so unrealistic in these trade packages that they throw out.
I know. You know Hero for anybody, right? It's like Hero can get them back anybody, basically.
So I don't know.
We got Bo Nix. I'm fading next season, says Sports Facts. Yeah, kind of had
You need to remember, like, these quarterbacks. And I said it with Stroud. I faded Stroud this year in fantasy. There's a laundry list of these quarterbacks that are great the first year that are awful. They're not awful, but they struggle their second year because there's
regress.
I'm not going to take Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to take Bo Nix. I'm not going to take Sam Darnold. Any of these quarterbacks that just coming out of nowhere and have great seasons, I want nothing to do with. I am going to be fine with taking a Joe Burrow, a Justin Herbert, even a Jared Goff or a Kyler Murray, those type of guys, just because I know what their floor is going to be year after year.
You've seen it for more of a sample size. We get to the Chargers at the Raiders. You were talking about Bowers and the amazing season that he has had so far. 108 total receptions, sets the NFL rookie record and the 5th most by any tight end in history. Also broke the receiving yards record, but most for a rookie tight end, set by Ditka back in 1961. 8 games this year with at least 7 catches and 70 yards. The Chargers, they have clinched a playoff spot. They could move up to the number 5 and play at Houston instead of at Baltimore. So if you're the Chargers, that's a big deal, right? Playing against a Houston team that has struggled against good teams versus a Ravens team that beat the crap out of you earlier in the year, that was kind of handling you. You came back late, but those two teams feel like they're kind of in different directions right now, the Texans versus the Ravens. So I feel like the Chargers are going to be trying to play in this game, at least to make sure that they get to go play the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to give their effort. I mean, I think the Raiders are going to play for Pierce. Pierce has been good the back half of the season. For me, what I'm going to do in this game is I'm just going to see how many receptions Neighbors has and then go into it and then look to bet Bowers all receptions.
Knowing what he needs at that point.
That's all I'm going to be doing in this game. In terms of side, Raiders are going to play from Pierce. Interesting to see what they're going to do with him. Are they going to bring him back? I don't think they should, but I'm not an owner of the Raiders, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Raiders, another team, interesting going into the offseason. But in terms of this game, Chargers are going to be a team I want to bet in the playoffs, and they for sure want to play Houston. I'll probably take the Chargers right off of openers.
The Rams have clinched the number 3 spot in the NFC. Had a weird last 4 games where they scored 44 against the Bills. Then they haven't scored more than 20 in their last 3, but they won all 4 of those games. How about 11 games in a row where they haven't scored in the first quarter? That's just weird. Jimmy G is going to be starting for the Rams, though. They're sitting all their starters because they don't really have anything to play for. And the Seahawks don't have anything to play for. I think they're the team with the best record, especially if they win this game. They'll have the best record to not make the playoffs. So right where you don't want to be, right in that purgatory where you're not good enough to make the playoffs, but you're not bad enough to get like a real good pick in the draft. Any thoughts in this game, Seattle and the Rams?
I just did Metcalf anytime TD plus 170. Last 2 games against the Rams, he scored. 3 of the last 4, he scored. Rams have struggled against wide receiver ones. Now their secondary guys are going to be sitting. I know everyone's saying, well, JSN has been their guy. Why has JSN been doing good? They've been bracket coverage. Metcalf's going to be going against backups. Smith is going to look to throw the ball. Obviously, all these incentives with Smith, I think he's going to lean toward Metcalf just because Metcalf is the more explosive player. JSN is going to work underneath. So I did Metcalf here plus 170 anytime touchdown.
Just a Metcalf TD for Eric. Nothing at all for me. This one was one of those stayaways where I just don't know what these two teams are playing for at this moment. I guess the same could be said in this next game where you've got the 49ers on the road against the Cardinals. Josh Dobbs, I believe, will be starting for the 49ers. On the Cardinals side, McBride got his touchdown. He just passed 1,000 yards receiving. He ranks in the top 3 in tight ends in receptions, targets, receiving yards per game, yards per route, targets per route run, team target share, yards after catch, receiving first downs. Eric, you were pointing this out earlier in the year. He's one of the more underrated players in the league, and like probably a top 2 to 3 tight end, and people don't really have him in that conversation when they talk about the best tight ends, but the guy is like really legitimate. Anything for you in this game, Cardinals, 49ers?
So real quick, I forgot in the Raiders game, I played Madison over 59.5 rushing receiving yards.
Nice.
He needs 67 yards to get a 250K bonus. I think with the lack of weapons they have, and obviously with everyone being hurt in the backfield, he's in a great position to go over this total. If you really want to get crazy, he does need 8 catches for another bonus, but I think they're going to give him the yards just because it's going to be easier for him to get to. In this game, who is the guy that touches the quarterback? Quarterback's the guy that touches the ball all the time. That being said, Kyler Murray needs 50 yards to hit an incentive. His over-under rushing yards opened up at 28.5. I know it's ballooned up a little bit. If you can get it in the 30s, I would still play it, but I bet Kyler Murray over 28.5 rushing yards. Also, he needs a TD to hit an incentive, a rushing TD to hit a contract incentive. So, that's plus 170. So I played that as well. And the thing we need to remember, these contract incentives, the player is so aware of these. And you have the guy that's touching the ball who's going to dictate everything.
You can control where it goes.
You know what I mean? It wouldn't surprise me if he gets this in the first drive and then he has magically hurt. I don't know. I like Murray here. I bet those two. That's basically it for me.
Big game of the week, Sunday Night Football, playing for the number 1 seed in the NFC. Team that loses drops all the way down to the 5, playing for the NFC North. The Detroit Lions, a 2.5-point favorite over the Minnesota Vikings. Lots of injuries for Detroit, but man, if any team could use the win and the bye to try to get a couple of their defensive guys healthy and back for the playoffs, it would be this Detroit Lions team. Just a fascinating matchup, though. I think you could say right now, the Vikings are probably more well-balanced overall, talent-wise. The Lions probably still have a higher ceiling on the offensive side. What I've been so impressed with this year, the Vikings who have won 9 in a row, they're 9-1 in one-score games. You got the Lions who have won 12 of their last 13. We've never seen 2 teams with 14 wins play each other until the championship game or the Super Bowl. So this, theoretically, is the best NFL regular season game in history with the 2 best teams playing each other in the regular season. What I've been impressed with Sam the most, though, he will make the mistakes and then he will bounce back. After throwing an interception last week against the Packers, he comes back on the next possession. He goes 5 of 5. And if you look at his numbers this year, Sam Darnold, number 6 in PFF offensive grade, number 5 in PFF passing grade, 4th in big time throw percentage, and tied for 13th in turnover worthy play percentage. So not even all that bad in turning over the ball when he's making big time throws. Top 10 in completion percentage, 4th in yards per attempt. Vikings are 5th in dropback success rate. He has over 4,100 yards with 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So even if he never hits this peak again, has another season close to this, the guy won 14 games, which is as much as he won in his entire time with the Jets. I want to give him a little bit of love for that. And I've been impressed with how many times I felt like, Sam Darnold's probably going to struggle now. And he's bounced back. Like, O'Connell's put him in such a spot to succeed. I wonder in this game, I I really don't have a strong opinion, Eric. I'm just so excited to watch this game with these two teams. I just worry with the Lions about all of the defensive issues. Someone like a Carlton Davis in this game would probably be so helpful against the receivers that the Vikings have. Like if it's 3rd and 5 or 6, the Vikings have two guys, they can go out and get a big first down for you. What are your thoughts on this game? Do your Lions get the job done, or did you lean Vikings? What do you do here?
Maybe I'm a homer. I give this one on my show. I did the Lions -2.5. I know that Flores defense has been better. Lights out this season. Second half of the season, production has been down. Teams are moving the ball a lot more effective on them. But the key is Ben Johnson is a bitter man, and that's why I love him. He holds grudges. I hold grudges too. Ben Johnson was fired from the Brian Flores stamp when Flores was in Miami. And someone asked him about that, and you could kind of tell with his facial expressions, it still kind of irritates him. When we look at in 3 games, what the Johnson's offense has done against the Flores defense, averaging 22 first downs, 387 total yards, 119 on the ground, 26.8 yards passing, 30.3 points per game, scoring at least 30 in every game. One of the weaknesses of the Flores defense is the slot. Brown has cooked against the Flores defense, averaging 10.7 targets, 9 receptions, 120.7 receiving yards. I know the Lions have a million injuries, but do we trust Sam Darnold? I've never been a Sam Darnold guy. I know he's been great this season. I think Flora O'Connell has done a great job of putting him in a situation, but he's still top 10 in turnover-worthy plays. Campbell has been a covering god. Lions offense, they can score on anybody. And I think
they're going to be able to score with it.
This game is going to come down to Campbell is going to go for it on 4th down, and that's going to be the game. It's kind of going to be, his 4th down variance is what's going to win it. He's been a little bit more, I don't want to say risky, but he rolls the dice more than O'Connell. O'Connell plays a little tighter. Campbell is going to be more of a higher variance guy. I trust him and Goff more than I trust O'Connell and Darnold.
When Goff has been really good against Flores recently, the last couple of years. Like, he's been good against the pressure. It actually was funny because when Goff was on the Rams, one of the games when Flores was with the Dolphins was when Goff couldn't deal with a lot of that pressure. And he's really improved since then. I think if I had to trust one unit the most, I would trust the Lions offense. I think the Vikings probably, I don't know if the Lions can get a stop if they need to as much, but I trust the Lions with the ball in their hands. Like you said, Dan Campbell's going to go for it when you're up by 4 and say, let's just seal the game right here and let's win the game. And I do think that Dan and the Lions are going to play this game almost like it's their Super Bowl, and that extra week of rest for them would be so huge to try to get a couple of the defensive guys back and a couple of them feeling better. That, man, it's an awesome, awesome game that we have for Sunday Night Football to end the season here. Any last thoughts on this one, Eric?
No, Lions are going to be out, though. Make sure you look to – you guys should all have kind of an idea of what you want. What
you think the line might be, right? And then as soon as it comes out, where's there an inefficiency? Jump on it right away if you think it's off or you think there's a big difference in what it should be. Eric, let's talk about Boom Fantasy and the lineups that we have. Just a reminder for everyone, if they want to get some action and they want to play props, parlay those props together and head to Boom Fantasy, what's the promo code they need in order to take advantage?
EOFT21.
Okay, so ETOF21. Eric, here is your Boom Fantasy entry for this week. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I did the Pollard anytime touchdown. Needs to hit that bonus. I did the Sutton over the 81.5. It is a little bit juiced up from the prop I initially played, but it is the 82, the mark he needs for the incentive. Adams TD, obviously Rodgers is going to look to get him that TD. the Murray TD. Murray needs a rushing TD for his bonus. So I'm very contract and narrative incentive with mine today.
Yep, I'm kind of similar. I went Brian Thomas Jr. I was pointing out how good he's been most of the season, one of the more solid rookies that you could depend on. Mike Evans, we know the incentive he needs. He needs to get 85 yards, so I went with Evans there. Gainwell, feel like he's just going to get a lot of the run today against a bad Giants team that even last week allowed but 35 points. And then Adams, you had also Adams with the incentive there with the Rodgers trying to get that 500th touchdown catch and the milestone. So how much money will the sportsbook make if Evans goes under his total? I know, right? The total for Evans is pumped up because everyone knows Baker's out there talking about it. He wants to get it for him. Erik, buddy, we made it through another season. As we've gotten a little older the last couple of years, sometimes, it was a little harder this year to get every week. It's actually been a good year for me as far as like I'm working with some other places. So sometimes the schedule has been a little bit tough, but you're always so flexible, man. We always make sure that when we're here, we've done the work, we're playing these games ourselves, and I always learn something from you, man. So another great year from you, and we'll be following along with you. You're going to have your podcast on Tuesday, kind of reacting to everything and setting everybody up for the playoffs, right?
Yep, I'll be live on Tuesday, and then I have something comes out on Friday as well. Going to be doing some college football stuff this week too with the college football playoffs. And
Erik will join me some point throughout the week on my podcast where we'll go over everything for the playoffs. And then we're planning on Sunday morning next week, same time, 11 a.m.
Yep, and then we'll discuss off air on Saturday.
Yeah, because we have some games on different days this week. So good luck to all of you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate you checking in. And we hope you have a great NFL Week 18. Cash all your tickets. And we'll see you again next week.